Oh, and you hear that terrible high-pitched screaming.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Mask of the Slasher. Me and Quint today. We're going to talk about Jaws.
Bet we are.
Yep. Yep. I want Josh to start though and tell me what Jaws is to you, because I know it's a big deal.
Oh, huge deal. Like, it was, like, when I was a kid, I was just totally fascinated by sharks and by the ocean, sea life, all that kind of stuff. I used to force my mom to read me these books I had about sharks over and over again.
Yeah.
And, man, when I saw Jaws as a kid, I can't tell you the exact day or time or anything like that, but seeing that movie just blew my mind because I was just totally fascinated with sharks. And here was a movie that was just all about this massive killer shark, and I just thought it was the greatest thing ever. It's still to this day a top 5 movie for me, absolutely.
Yeah. And it wasn't a huge deal to me as a kid, but it was definitely a staple. Mm-hmm. When that son of a bitch would come up on TBS, that was it,
Oh, yeah, that's the other good thing. Well, for me as a kid, it was on all the time.
All the time.
Whether it be on HBO or TBS or wherever, yeah. It seemed like there was always somewhere you could watch it.
There was never a shortage of Jaws.
And I watched it a lot, trust me.
Especially around Independence Day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because that's when it takes place. And then also, I mean, you went to Universal Studios in Florida when you were a kid.
Yes.
So the Jaws ride was a huge deal to you.
Oh, yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was so cool. I was like, still to this day, I mean, I don't know how, I mean, obviously it's not there anymore, so can't say for sure how it would have held up, as an adult. But man, I just thought that was the greatest thing ever as a kid to see an animatronic Jaws in person. It's fantastic.
It is. It's really cool. Well, and then when we were on our honeymoon and we went to Universal Studios Hollywood, we did get to take a picture with Jaws.
Yes.
Anyway, so Jaws came out in 1975. It was based on a book. And what I learned is that his name was Peter Benchley, was the author.
Right.
He is actually in Jaws.
Oh, he is?
Yeah. Yeah, he is the reporter, the news reporter. Isn't that cool?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
As many years as I've been watching this movie, I had no idea about
I didn't either.
That's crazy.
Bonus features.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty cool. I always think it's cool when the author or director, whatever, makes it into the movie. Same thing with Deliverance. The author of that book was the sheriff.
Oh.
So,
Wow.
Yeah, kind of cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
But as you know, Roy Schneider was the star of this. He was the sheriff.
Yeah.
I know him mostly because he played Bob Fosse and all that jazz,
Yes.
which is a great movie. And then Robert Shaw
Yes.
as Quint.
The legendary Robert Shaw. That's right.
Yes. And then one of my favorite actors is Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah.
So I like him because of Close Encounters. But really it comes back to, this is going to be corny, Stakeout.
Oh, yeah.
And Another Stakeout. I love those movies so much. They were something that was always on too,
Yeah.
So they're just great. I almost want to watch it again.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah, good movies. So anyway, most people know how difficult it was to film this movie because of the shark itself.
Right.
Because the technology was so long ago.
Right.
It just didn't have what we have now.
Yeah.
Nowadays it would just be CGI.
Which is poo-poo.
It is. It's just not the
Yeah.
same. So the shark itself, also known, I think, what did he call him?
Bruce.
No, well, Bruce was his nickname, but also the Great White Turd was what Steven Spielberg called him. And it was because they had so many problems with him. And what it was is that the same guy that made, an octopus or something that's in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
Yeah, the giant squid, I believe.
Oh, it's a squid.
Yeah.
Okay. So, obviously, I've never seen it. But the same guy who made that made Jaws.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've learned all kinds of trivia about this movie today. This is great.
Well, that's what happens when you do some research, as I find out dumb stuff for you to learn about. But I think it's pretty cool. So he actually had retired.
Okay.
And they called him in for this, though. And like, pretty please,
Yeah.
we need another ocean-y thing, But what ended up happening is that the salt water would get into the mechanics of the shark,
Right.
and it would cause it to short out and do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But that shark, Bruce was not in there at first. What originally was supposed to happen was that they were going to film a bunch of real footage.
Oh, okay.
And this was that couple that we had talked about before that, what are their names? Oh, Ron and Valerie Taylor.
Yeah.
They're the ones that were filming all this footage for them, for Jaws. And it just didn't look right. They couldn't get the right angles. So the only part of Jaws that is real footage is the cage.
Okay.
When Hooper goes into the cage.
Yeah.
It's not actually Hooper in the cage, though. It is a stuntman.
Okay.
Even the close-up of the face, which I thought was interesting. But here's some fun facts. So the reason they were doing all of this is obviously because animatronics and all that was harder to get, at that point,
Right.
and to we can have a man in a shark suit,
Right.
it's gonna look stupid. But the real shark, the real great white, is not as big as Jaws is made out to be.
Right.
So they used a little person at first in the cage to make the shark look bigger.
Wow.
Yep. And they put him in a smaller cage,
Yeah.
obviously, too. So obvious reasons that didn't look right either. That would look stupid. And I think that the person that they had hired, he had a really hard time with it for obvious reasons.
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, he's like an hors d'oeuvre.
Right, exactly. It'd be terrifying.
Yeah, they tried doing the real footage thing. It didn't work out. They used it for that little tiny tidbit, and then they went to animatronics.
Okay, yeah. And I remember actually watching a thing, like a documentary with Ron and Valerie Taylor when I was a kid. And the reason it stuck out to me was because they had these, over their diving suits, they had this like chainmail that they had developed that so if the shark bit them, that wouldn't, it wouldn't get them. It would.
As much.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't really stop a sharkie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it probably wouldn't be as bad. And the story itself, it was based off of a real story of a 4,500-pound shark that had attacked people in Manhattan at a Manhattan beach back in the early 70s. So they kind of were just like, yeah, let's go for that. And originally, Steven Spielberg and all that, they weren't quite sure about this.
Yeah.
And didn't know how it was going to happen. And were even skeptical of it once they got to the day of filming. But it obviously worked out.
Oh, yeah.
Somehow or another, this movie worked out.
Yeah.
It still shocks me with as many problems that they had that they still did an amazing job.
Oh, yeah.
They even had to throw in a scene at the end that to add to the movie because the scene where Hooper and Sheriff, whatever was his name,
Brody.
Brody. Oh, yeah. So when those two are out and about, and they find the boat that the sailor, whatever those guys were, the dumbasses,
Yeah.
that tried to go out and get Jaws,
Yeah.
and that remember the head
Right.
comes up.
Yeah.
Well, that scene itself was actually filmed in a swimming pool after the fact.
Oh, really?
After the movie was even in screenings.
Really?
And then they added it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it was because they just didn't think it had enough. So I thought that was interesting. As you know, Steven Spielberg also directed the movie Duel
Yes.
with the semi-truck. I can't remember the whole thing. It's been a long time since I've watched it.
Right.
I think I'd probably fall asleep these days. It's a hot movie. It's
Yeah, yeah.
That's a hot one. Ugh. But anyway, so in Duel, if you guys have ever seen it, the truck goes flying off of the cliff at the end. Sorry, ruined the
Spoiler
end for
alert.
you. Big surprise there that would happen. But anyway, it goes off of the cliff, and they used a sound effect in that was like old Godzilla sound effects from the
Okay.
old shitty Godzilla movies that you probably love.
Yeah.
And they just kind of, distorted it a little bit and kind of made it a little weirder sounding. Anyway, so that's what they used for the sound of that truck crashing down the mountain.
Right.
Well, Steven Spielberg felt almost like the story of Duel and Jaws were similar. So when Jaws finally goes down,
Right.
after he gets blown up,
Yeah.
the sound that is used in that is the same sound.
Oh, really?
They use the exact same sound bite from
That's crazy.
Duel. I
Wow.
thought that was cool that it was like an homage to Duel,
Yeah.
and him getting his start. So John Williams, as you know, did the music for this, the score.
Yes.
And he decided that the music needed to sound piratey,
Okay.
as opposed to, because it's more playful sounding
Yeah.
and fuller than you would expect. It's not just like, Friday the 13th. The whole point of having a score is to increase and decrease your moods throughout the movie
Right.
and give you anticipation and that kind of thing, and set the stage for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So what they did is, they would normally, we all know the Jaws music.
Right.
We all know when he's coming.
Yeah.
But there's also pauses in the movie where you're not really anticipating something, like when Brody is, bitching about throwing out the
Yeah,
chum.
right.
There's no sound. There's
Right.
nothing happening. And so normally you would have, oh, here comes Jaws,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
No, they didn't do that. And they
Right.
did it to get a rise out of people
Right.
because you were not suspecting that it was going to happen. And so he did an amazing job with that as well. But Steven Spielberg was surprised by the music. He just thought it was going to be, simple and boring.
Right.
But it's, one of the most well-known scores
Oh, yeah.
out there, and we even have the record
We do.
because we're cool like
We
that.
are cool like that. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na.
It's great.
Shark facts.
Okay. So, sharks. As we know, Josh loves them.
Yes, we do.
So we're going to do some shark facts. I'm going to kind of test him out and see how much he really knows. Because why not? You know. Also, by the way, if you own the Jaws DVD, I think we own the anniversary one or something. I don't know. There's probably 4,000 different versions released in the $5 bin at Walmart. So, but there's shark facts.
Yeah.
As a special feature. That's where I got all my facts from.
Okay.
Because
if I do really bad at this, you have to cut it out.
That's fine. One of the things that I learned is that sharks are ever evolving, just like every other creature.
Right.
They are becoming bigger, stronger, and faster, just like the Kanye West song. So they keep adapting to things, and so shit can go down pretty quickly for them. You know, as we have seen, they've become more aggressive. They've come inland more.
Yeah.
And shark attacks aren't stopping.
Right.
It's been 350 million years of evolution of sharks,
right,
which is bananas.
Yeah.
Tell me about the sharks, though, from the dinosaur days.
Oh, like Megalodon? Well, yeah. I mean, Megalodon was basically like a giant great white. I mean, essentially, if great white were like a kaiju, basically, you know. I mean, there's a famous picture of they have they replicate what they think, you know, the mouth of that shark looked like, and there's like, I think like 7 or 8 people standing inside it. So it's just a behemoth of a shark. So cool, you know. I'd love to see something like that in real life.
So, but how would it have evolved from that, though? How would it have gotten smaller?
Well, it's because the reason a creature like Megalodon died out was because at some point there became a scarcity of food supply. So the adaptation there was the sharks start to become smaller. They don't need as much food to survive, you know, that type of thing.
Okay.
At least that's my understanding of it.
And then how do you think that they have learned about these sharks?
Well, sharks are cartilaginous fish, which means their bones are made of cartilage, so they don't, you know, you can't just dig them up like a fossil of a dinosaur, say. So it's basically from like their teeth and stuff like that, is my understanding.
Yes, and how many teeth do sharks have?
Oh, their mouths are like teeth factories, basically. Yeah. I mean, once, you know, they've got, and if you look, you know, you can go to like a museum or whatever and see, you know, their actual jaws. And if you look on the back side of them, you know, obviously they've got the teeth sticking up in the front, but if you look at the back side of one of those, you can see all the little teeth forming back there, getting ready to pop up once they lose one.
Yeah,
so.
It's just like a baby tooth and an adult tooth coming in. But we don't keep regrowing teeth, unfortunately.
No.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sharks actually shed somewhere, they say tens of thousands of teeth a year.
Right.
That's crazy. Why there isn't more in gift shops, I don't know. You know, I mean, my gosh, there should be some everywhere. Okay, so one of the terms that I found in this, I thought this was interesting, was low intensity feeding drive. What is it?
Which means basically they just swim and eat whatever comes along to them. They don't actively hunt.
Yeah. And then what is called a shark frenzy is basically where they just attack each other.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know why, but every time I read Shark Frenzy, I think of the song Ballroom Blitz, and then I think of everybody in like a pit, you know? I don't know why. Those two things go together for me for whatever reason.
The thing about that passive feeding you were talking about is the different things that they will try to eat. I remember a book from when I was a kid where they talked about how, just like in the movie, they cut the tiger shark open and they find like license plates and stuff like that. And that's actually actual things that have been found inside real sharks when they cut them open. There's license plates. I read one was they found like part of a suit of armor inside, you know, all kinds of things. So.
Where the fuck is a suit of armor just hanging around? Did like a round table pizza close?
You know, you'd have to imagine it was on a ship that went down or something like that.
I guess so. That's just weird.
Yeah.
That's weird to find that out. Near the Hawaiian Islands in 1976. That was the last discovery of a new shark.
Yeah. They're not seen very often, megamouth sharks.
Yeah.
They're quite rare.
Once again, megamouth just sounds like you're just a Karen. Like it's the Karen of sharks. Like, oh, shut your big megamouth, you know. I mean, it's pretty bad. I don't know. And then female sharks are bigger than male sharks.
Right. Yeah. The biggest great white, or one of the biggest great whites they've ever found, it's debated, is Deep Blue, and Deep Blue is a female shark, and she's huge. I can't remember the exact measurements. Maybe we can put that up on the screen.
I'll find that for you. Yeah. So now that we've gone through the fun facts and all the other cool stuff, we're just going to talk about the movie and our likes and dislikes of it and all that fun stuff. Like I said, Jaws was not a big of a deal to me as it was to you. Maybe it's just because you're just a dork. The only times I watched it was when it happened to be on. I never was seeking out Jaws because I didn't have to.
Right.
There was, like we said, no shortage of it. No Walmart $5 bin was short of that either.
Right.
You know, it was readily available.
Easily accessible, yeah. And I think that's part of why it had such an impact on our generation, especially, is because, it was, yeah, when we were kids, you could find it all the time. You could watch it practically any time you wanted.
Yeah, exactly. And it actually never scared me as a kid. I mean, it made me not want to go into a deeper part of the water.
Yeah.
But that's also because I almost drowned.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't have to do with sharks per se, because I'm like, okay, well, although this was based off of a real story, it's, the statistics of it
Right.
are, I can't talk, are fairly vast.
Even as a kid, I would say Jaws didn't really scare me, but maybe more so the documentaries and stuff I watched were a little more scary.
Well, that makes sense.
Even though those documentaries would typically explain that it was very rare to be attacked by a shark and things like that, I still definitely had some trepidation the first time I set foot in the ocean in Florida.
The movie itself, I never really found it to be super gory.
No.
They did it on purpose to where you saw the blood.
Yeah.
You saw some things kind of happening, but you never saw the full thing.
Right.
I think Quint being eaten was probably the most graphic.
Yeah.
But the girl at the beginning, the dum-dum,
Yeah.
this girl, she's high and stupid, and her and this guy that she just picked up, they're going to go hump on the beach, but she's like, oh, let's go in the water first. And you don't see much. You just see her get pulled and tugged, and that is more terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Because it wasn't just one tug and you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
It was I don't know what that is first.
Right, exactly. And that's, I think that's interesting they pulled it off that way, because if you watch, shark documentaries, as I've seen many, they'll explain that sharks, they'll bite something to see if it's something that they can eat, So when she gets pulled that first time, it's like that first exploratory bite, to see, oh, can I eat her?
Yeah.
And then once it realizes he can, it's on.
Yeah, it's like, oh, she tastes like Hawaiian Tropic. I like that. I like coconut, so this works out for me.
Tastes like a pina colada.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of gore, and the shark is not overexposed for the most part,
And I think that's mostly because it was a piece of shit.
Right, and that ended up being to their advantage.
Yeah.
For that, I think.
I think so. Now, Quint.
Yes.
What is up with Quint?
He's one of the greatest movie characters of all time.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because it's just such an eccentric performance and such a committed performance. And he just has this personality that kind of just draws you in. What's he going to do next? He's so unpredictable and funny. And the dynamic between him and Richard Dreyfuss' character is just one of those fantastic relationships in a movie, I think.
Yeah.
I just think he kind of steals the show in a way. My favorite scene in the whole movie has nothing to do with the shark, even. I mean, it's the scene where they're drinking on the boat, and it's just such a jovial thing. They're singing, they're laughing. They're, him and Dreyfuss are having a pissing contest about their scars, and then they start talking about his tattoo of the USS Indianapolis, and it just takes this really dark turn, and he gives this monologue that's really great. Yeah, I just think that's such a great performance from Robert Shaw that it's like, I don't know, I just fell in love with that character as a kid, and to this day, like I said, probably top 5 character in a movie for me.
Yeah, well, and it's actually Steven Spielberg's favorite scene, too. Now, the USS Indianapolis, please tell the viewers what that is.
Well, if you want, I'm sure you've all seen the movie by now. Again, if you haven't, stop and go watch it. But Quint gives a monologue about being on board the USS Indianapolis, which was a ship that delivered the nuclear bomb that was eventually dropped on Japan in World War II. On the way back from making that delivery, the ship was torpedoed by a Japanese submarine. It sank. I don't remember how many men went into the water, but only a fraction of them came out. Some of them died of exposure. Many of them were, in fact, attacked by sharks and eaten. Yeah. So, it's a true story and a tragic story. No distress signal was ever sent because their mission was top secret. They were out in the water for like a week or something like that.
Yeah,
I think. So,
something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so it brings more dramatics to the story once you actually know it's real. Because I honestly had never heard this story before until we watched the movie again, and then you said, that's a real thing, and I'm like, holy shit, that's terrifying. But here's the one thing I don't understand about Quint. At the beginning of this movie, after the shark attacks and all that stuff, they're gathering up the townspeople so they can get a reward to go get the shark, and they're all so stupid. And they're in like a classroom or something. Yeah. And suddenly, oh God, it just creeps me out even thinking about it.
He scratches his nails on the chalkboard.
He scratches his nail on the chalkboard. Now, why is this man just holding snacks? He's just eating chips for no reason.
Yeah, there's a scene on the boat where he's got like some kind of crackers or something in his hand, and I think it was when they've got the line out and it gets tugged that first time. He puts it in his face, eating this cracker away, and he just stuffs it in his pocket.
It's so weird. It's like, was this like a military thing?
Yeah.
Like I just got to carry snacks with me? It's just so random.
Yeah.
But it makes me laugh every time I see it.
And I would say not only Quint, but all the performances in the movie are really good.
Yeah.
Roy Scheider's an amazing actor in my opinion, and he just, he's the dynamic that he brings is being the sheriff, but at this island town, but yet he's afraid of the water. I think that's a great dynamic there that kind of helps drive the movie.
Yeah.
And I mentioned the dynamic between Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss. I think there was some real life heat between those two.
There was. Well, Robert Shaw was an actual alcoholic, and he was drunk during the entire movie, and so it just kind of just fed the fire, and it wasn't just Richard Dreyfuss that had problems with him. So, and that's ultimately what killed him later on. So, but I do think that duo was hilarious. And then to actually see them to have, having that pissing match, and actually finding that they had some common ground.
Yeah.
Which ultimately ended up so tragic after finding out that story.
Yeah.
And then Robert Shaw dies and screams just like he talked about. Yeah. And that's, ugh.
Yeah, and if you ever read Moby Dick, Quint is basically Captain Ahab. The same thing happens in Moby Dick. Ahab's foot gets caught on a line and he gets dragged down into the depths of the ocean to drown. And then in Jaws, obviously, the shark eats him and drags him down into the water. So there's a lot of parallels between if you read Moby Dick and then watch Jaws. A lot of parallels there. I've never read Jaws, the novel, I'm a little embarrassed to say, but...
Fake fan.
Yeah, I know, right? But if you compare them... I can safely say if you compare the movie to Moby Dick, there's a lot of parallels between Quint and Ahab. It stands on its own. It's just an entertaining movie all around. But yeah, like me, if you know a lot about sharks, if you've read Moby Dick, all these things kind of enrich the viewing experience. And that's probably why this movie means more to me than it does to most people,
Yeah. Well, all in all, this is a great movie, obviously.
Yes.
It wouldn't be around all this time if it wasn't. It was a happy accident, in my opinion. The fact that they had so many problems and it still turned out so well. Yeah. And it's still one of the most well-known movies to exist. I don't know if there's a person out there who hasn't heard of Jaws. Yeah. If you guys have not seen this movie, once again, that rock that you're under, you got to lift it up a little bit, ease yourself out, and go find this movie because it is readily available. No, it's
don't
not
watch
hard.
any of the sequels.
Yeah, don't. Sequels are boo boo. Yeah, you don't want those.
Though I will say, as a kid, I saw Jaws 3D in the theater. That was kind of weird. It's kind of trippy as a kid.
Well, yeah, I can imagine it being kind of cool, actually. But yeah, I don't know. Anything else you want to say?
No, again, what more can I say about it? It's one of my favorite movies of all time. On any given day, it's probably my number one.
Yeah. There you go. What do you guys think of Jaws? Is it a horror movie? We think it's a horror movie. Yeah. It's terrifying. It gives you great fear. And the deaths are they're brutal despite you not seeing it completely. Yeah. It definitely, in my opinion, is a horror movie.
Yeah. And that's one of the great things. It is a horror movie, yet it has such a broad appeal because you could also argue that it's an action-adventure movie. You could argue that it's a buddy movie, It's all these different things. But yeah, at its core, I think it's definitely a horror movie.
Yeah, that's how I've always categorized it. It just, and also a summertime movie.
Yeah.
It just falls under that because it obviously, duh, But I don't know. What do you guys think of it?
Yeah, let us know in the comments.
Yeah. Did you guys ever go on the ride at Universal Florida? At Universal Hollywood, it was just the shark coming out of the water as you're on the tram tour, and I think that's still there.
Yeah, and the Jaws ride at Universal is almost kind of like the Jungle Cruise, but with Jaws,
See, that's rad.
Yeah, super cool.
Why would you get rid of that?
That was amazing.
Probably put something stupid there,
Best
too.
ride ever.
Yeah.
One of them, anyways.
I think that's it for this one.
I think so.
Until next time, bye!
Bye!